we're going to be drawing Terry and getting into a little bit more of his lore and his backstory. So you can see me sketching out the base here. The speed paint is going to go a little faster in this video because it took a little longer and I don't want you guys sitting here for 30 minutes. So let me know if you guys like that or you guys prefer the slower speed paint. So for Terry's backstory, he is a more secluded character. He grew up in a more secluded environment, so he is completely unaware of social norms, and he is a very quote-unquote strange person. I really struggle with this guideline for some reason. But Terry does his own thing, kind of completely out of social norms, because since he grew up in a place where social norms completely didn't affect him at all, he simply doesn't see them as important. Now you can see me struggling with the eyes for a second before I give up and just decide to just copy paste because that's easier for me and everyone else in the world. Here is where I add his scar over his blind eye. This is a more fresh scar. Still isn't entirely done healing because he does not take proper care of it and it keeps getting infected. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know that Terry likes to wear his hair over his eye, and that is why he actually has so many infections in that area, because he likes to wear his hair over his eye. But he also likes to hide that scar because he feels like it represents his failures. It doesn't, but that's what he feels like it does. You can see me moving on to the line work here, and as always, I have super clean line work. I always struggle with the second eye whenever I don't copy and paste, so this is probably going to take me a second here. Now that we fast forward through that, now we can move on to the rest of the line work. If you notice that I forgot the line for the shirt, don't worry, I'll go back and fix that later. I'm doing the hairline work on a separate layer, that way I can erase the lines that overlap without it getting in the way. Here's where I start to clean up the line work a little bit. Here I'm just adding some finishing details like eyelashes because everyone has them, and then some eyelids. And now the line work is done. So now we can move on to coloring. Whenever coloring Terry's jacket, which is black, I use a dark blue or a dark purple, just so that I don't use too many bland colors. It's the same for his shirt. I use a light blue color instead of a tan color for white. So you can probably see me zooming in and doing a whole lot of nothing. That's me just making sure all of the cracks are filled in so that when I'm shading, none of the little white spots poke through. Now the base coloring is done, except for the teeth, which I almost forgot again. Then I immediately start to shade the hair. Now you'll notice that I did something with the layer there. Basically all I did was change it from a normal layer to a multiply layer. I've been watching some tutorials recently, and apparently that's how you're supposed to shade. You're supposed to use a multiply layer for shading, so that's what I've been doing. You then see me add a screen or add layer for the highlights. I really struggle here with the highlights for a minute, so I'm going to speed through this. I eventually changed the color of the highlights and it ends up making it look fine, but I couldn't figure out why it didn't look right for a hot minute here. After getting the highlights to look okay, I moved on to the eyes, or the whites of the eyes at least. I always try to use a shade of gray for the whites of the eyes instead of pure white, just to make a contrast, and then I add highlights with white. You also will see me using blue to make shadows. I do that for fun. Then I move on to the face, specifically the skin. You can see me adding smaller shadows than I normally do. This is because I simply just wanted to try out something new. I also realized I made the nose a bit too big, so I went to correct that. You can see me redoing shadows for the nose here. And then moving on to the shadow of the eyes. I added a bit more definition to the shadows of everything. Then I started working on highlights. For those of you wondering Terry's age, Terry is 15 in this picture, but his age ranges depending on how I want to draw him. With his long hairstyle, he's around 13, but with this hairstyle, he's 15. I made the shadows for the neck a little bit too weird at first. I didn't know what was wrong with them, but they just felt really weird, so I deleted them and I readjusted them. Here I have some problems with the multiply layer, but don't worry, I figure it out. And then the shading of the skin is done. Now time to move on to the shirt. I used a dark blue to shade simply because it fit the shirt well, and I like using dark blue to shade anyway. So I added more wrinkles to the shirt. Then we move on to shading the jacket. For some reason I do not move here, I just shade the jacket all from one spot. It's kind of creepy, but I don't know why I didn't move. But I didn't, so then I move on to the highlights. Then I move on to shading his scar. I'm going to speed through this because it's not too interesting. Then we move on to the eyes. I immediately add some highlights and then some shadows. Here is where I debated adding pupils, but I decided against it. And started adding some pretty sparkles. I picked out some colors and started adding some highlights and stuff to the eyes, just for some decoration. Then I decided to add a outline type thing to the highlights, just to add some pop to it, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. I just think it makes it look better. And we're almost done with the eyes. We just have to add one last highlight. And it is on top of everything. Then we gotta start working on the background. I decided to start doing the same colors that were in the highlights of his eyes. Those were purple and blue. And then I added my signature. And then I started adding a bit more highlights to the face because I felt like it was a little bit bland. And that is the finished product. Thank you so much for watching. Please scan the QR code to check out my art account, and don't forget to watch my other videos. Thank you so much.